Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. That first piece was Fanfare for an Angel by Jim Stephenson. My name is Stuart Stephenson, no relation, but same spelling. It's a weird coincidence there. And we're the Atlanta Symphony trumpet section. I want to let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Anthony Limoncelli. I'm second trumpet with the Atlanta Symphony, and I started in September 2020. I was previously principal trumpet of Sarasota Orchestra, and I'm really happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Tiscione. I am associate principal trumpet with the Atlanta Symphony, and I started back in 2002, so I'm officially the old guy in this section. And I started as fourth trumpet. I eventually was a second trumpet, and now, I think since 2017, been associate principal.
Hi, my name is Maliniak. I'm the fourth and utility trumpet player with the Atlanta Symphony, and I started in 2018, and I came from Cleveland.
Yeah, we can do that. We're still trying to figure out the mics. We're not used to those. Well, for today, we're excited to have you here, and we're excited to be here. We're going to be going through a whole bunch of different orchestral rep for you. Things on piston trumpet, on rotary trumpet, maybe even some cornet. French, German, American. It's a little all over the place. But we want to talk about and demonstrate different styles and how we go about doing what we do. And then, during the middle, we'd like to have, there's one student group that's going to come up, and I believe they're going to be playing Strauss's Till Eulenspiegel. And so we'll have them play, and we'll step in and out, and try to see if we can get a good congealed section going. So throughout this, feel free if you ever have questions. I know there's mics going around and whatever, or you can just raise your hand and shout it out. We might not be able to see you because of the spotlights, but we'll get it all figured out. And if you have questions, please ask them, and we'll do our best to answer them. We're going to move on with some Copeland Symphony No. 3, which we actually just did. I don't even know when it is now. October. It's been a long couple months already. But anybody want to speak about this, or we'll just dive in? Dive in.
Sure. So second trumpet on Copeland, especially this piece, Copeland 3, is not just the second trumpet part, I would say. It's also a bit of playing first, because as you could tell, I had to play in unison with Stuart often. After coming out of a chorale-like singing sort of comfortable range, I had to jump up to high B and then match him when he's coming in on his high Bs too. So it just goes to show you that sometimes as a second trumpet player, you need to be able to play principal lines with the same timbre and musicality as the first player.
Actually, Anthony, let me ask you, when this particular excerpt we just played starts, you're absolutely in harmony. So what are you trying to do until it melds to the four of us? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So I'm trying to be aware of Stuart's leading as far as his direction musically, but also I'm trying to match my intervals between notes with him and also be conscious, obviously, of the harmonic structure. So I know what part of the chord I'm in, I know where Stuart's going. I'm getting more of a sense as we play more together of his tendencies on certain notes, and yeah, so.
And I guess similarly, you know, when Mark and I joined about halfway through this beautiful chorale, we're trying to do the same things. We're just trying to fit in to what these guys have established in terms of style and pitch. It gets a little, not confusing, but in the third part, often in this symphony and many the Strauss symphonies and Bruckner, not Strauss symphonies, Strauss tone poems and Mahler symphonies, the third part will actually shift between a section roll and a lead roll. And it's very brief in this passage we just played, but there is a spot where the melody just absolutely passes from first trumpet over to third, and my job is to not rock the boat, so to speak, just to really just kind of keep that melodic material and line singing in the same way. And then it fades right back out. So it's a brief moment in time where that might happen. And then when we finished, you notice that it finished with second, third, and fourth, all in unison. But I view my role there as I'm going to lead just a little bit more there because I'm sort of the de facto first voice, even though we are in unison. That's the kind of de facto role. So I'll have a little bit more motion to sort of just lead a little bit style-wise, or where a breath might be or something. So I don't know if Mark had anything to add.
I'll just kind of tail end on that with the unison stuff. If you notice, we're not competing against each other with the sound. Like Mike was saying, he's kind of leading that unison section, so we're just blending and trying to fit into the sound so that nobody's having to push. It's a lot more, I'd say, taking 5 to 10% off of the edge so that it just is round and it doesn't push or insist individually. It's more of a collective combo of our sounds together. And then just, you know, as you can hear, there's a lot of quartal, quintal harmony, a lot of fourths, fifths, open fifths are tricky to tune. So just knowing what role you have in the chord is really important. We can get into that later with like the other things we talk about though.
So I think we might, if you guys are interested, after saying all that, we might just play it again for you, just so you can keep an eye on or ear on what everyone's doing, starting off with Stuart and Anthony and their really nice melodic stuff there.
Hello? There it is, okay. We're going to continue on a little bit further in the symphony, the second movement, something a little bit heavier hitting. This is a painful symphony. It just keeps going, and we're not even in like the really painful stuff yet. But we're going to continue on. Like these guys have talked about what they do with their role. Part of my role, is to try to, obviously, quote unquote lead, which can mean a lot of different things. Sometimes it's doing what I want to do, but sometimes if the group's not doing what I want, or maybe how I want to do it, or if I'm not playing how I want to do it, I have to try to shift and try to corral everything. If we're slightly off timing-wise, I have to help reset or clarify. Sometimes Anthony has asked me different times throughout the season in a bit, give me a cue here, or give me a little more or something, just because the way I'm hearing and feeling it isn't maybe as easy for him to get, or maybe it's just how it, timing-wise, needs a little bit extra to help clarify things. So that's part of my job, is to try to balance what's happening here with the rest of the orchestra. All right. And like we said, this is only the second movement. It only gets more and more painful from there. So obviously some of this is easier to coordinate, when we have a conductor and everything. And you might notice there's some, phasing in and out between the four of us. But the more we play together, the better it gets. Also, when we're not having to worry about playing so many high Cs, it's probably also a little bit easier to coordinate everything in, because I'm not just going on like, just going for it. But there's things in this symphony and other ones that we'll play where maybe I'll play less, especially in context. Once we do this entire thing, I'll say to Anthony or to Mike or Mark, whoever has a part in unison with me, hey, I might take this one note off, or I'll take part of a note, I'll play a little bit less. And that makes their jobs more difficult, but it makes my jobs easier, and I call rank on that one.
So in this movement, there are two stretches that are tough for second trumpet. This is the first one, and then there's a recap of this theme later, that you need the same sort of pacing as you go through it. And I mean pacing in the sense that you need to know your role. So you'll see that there are times where I'm playing, and it says maybe forte or fortissimo on the page, but my part's not important. So I'm not going to waste my face playing just motor things that I could just show with my articulation to make sure that I could play a high C in unison with Stu. So.
I don't know, I thought we all had all those repeated eighth notes, that those were really melodic, weren't they? That's exactly the spot where the eighth notes were just passing off. I mean, we're marked, I think, forte or fortissimo even on the page, but that's not a spot where we're just not that interesting. So we will try to just sort of back off, be present, especially when it thins out to one on a part, but using articulation really to kind of have the voice be heard rather than actual volume. Anything else?
Yeah, I'll throw one more thing in. So at least with the fourth part, a lot of things that I play is kind of as a unit with third trumpet, and then the first and second kind of do their own thing. So it's like two units or two teams here, and I'm just trying to almost be like a second player to Mike when I'm playing this, especially if we're doing unison stuff. You can probably hear we're all playing like high A's in unison. Again, it's not like you got to crank. I'm always trying to fit in to who I'm playing unison with, and then bringing out anything that I have that's independent or more of a harmonic thing. So when we split in the eighth notes and we actually have harmonies there, I'll probably beef it up a lot more so that it's a little bit more full from the bottom. But anything that's like in unison, I'm just trying to like color and fit and blend.
There's also one spot that Mark and I want to draw your attention to. Yeah, I don't know if you heard it. There's one little 16th note passage that third and fourth trumpets are like, I think we're with the oboes, but no one will ever hear the oboes here. It's just kind of this notorious spot. It's hard to get it to jump out and be heard, but it's actually a very, well, it's a lot of fun to play. It's really hard. I mean, it's not like we're rocking on a high C, but when we're playing 16th notes in the middle register and jumping around from note to note, it's kind of hard to pop it out. But that's a spot that we kind of lay for. We're really trying to goose it a little bit. And so we have forte marked on the page, but we definitely don't play forte.
I mean, it's pretty nasty, but at least me personally, I know I try to get the fingerings and at least land on the right last note. I know that sounds funny, but like just like ending on the right final note is more important than sometimes the middle.
The gesture is,
yeah.
The intention is more important. We might play the whole thing again, just to, I mean, these guys have the real workout to do, so.
As long as I don't miss more high C's, we'll be okay. So we're going to transition over to something a little bit different, but as those guys are getting ready, during that, you notice that I'm sitting in the upper register whenever I'm playing most of the time anyway, and I'm hoping that I'm playing everything in tune. And there's plenty of times where that's not the case, but their job, and they're great at it, is they follow me whether it's right or wrong, usually. If I'm so far out of it that I need to be reminded, like, hey, you're very wrong. It happens occasionally, but most of the time I try to keep everything down, especially like a high G, whatever, which can be a real beast of a note to try to keep down in pitch. But you'll notice they're constantly moving and trying to follow me. If I play something a little bit lower, they're going to try to follow me as best they can, especially when there's octaves. I mean, sometimes when you're playing in unison, it can be easier, or it can be more difficult, and when you're really cranking away, it makes it even more difficult. But now for something a little bit different, and you notice we pulled out the rotary trumpets.
This is on, okay. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, back a little earlier than Copeland. We're going to do some Brahms. We're going to play the opening chorale from the Academic Festival Overture. And, this is something that would often happen on the first half of a program, say perhaps on the first half of a program where the Copeland 3 is on the second half. So this would be a piece that would typically fall to me to play principal on, and joined by these guys. And we're just going to play the little opening chorale. Obviously, we're going to use our German trumpets or Austrian. I have an Austrian trumpet. These guys have German trumpets. Yeah, so just a little chorale, and maybe we'll talk about it in a second. So obviously, it's a very different musical context than the Copeland, right? This is some of my favorite repertoire to play, Brahms and honestly Beethoven and Mozart, because the work we can do as a section, whether it be 2 or 3, is so clear. It's these intervals, they're octaves, they're fifths, and there's not a lot of competition, right? In musical competition, it's just the texture is very clear, and we can really, just try to blend with each other as best we can. I mean, these are just basically major chords that we're playing here, and it's like, okay, we're trying to get at that, get the pitch right, get the chords right, and then hopefully also get the music right, get the phrase right. But that's what this repertoire is all about. It's not often that we get in the Beethoven stuff. We have our moments, and they're plentiful, but not as much as, say, in a Copeland. But we are this background and this harmonic support for the music, and I just find it great as section players to play this kind of repertoire, because the texture is so clear. Anyway.
Yeah, just to jump off what Mike was saying, some second trumpet notes. Again, you'll notice even though the music is so different from Copeland, a lot of the same techniques apply. So, like I was playing in unison a lot in the Copeland with Stuart, you'll notice that there are times where I come in on Cs, third space Cs, in unison with Mike, and I have to make sure that I give him the space to lead, so his sound is the one in front, but I'm still active and still playing, so the intonation's correct, and then when I jump out for like my little moments, which as a second trumpet you have to savor when they come, that you're ready for it. You can't just kind of sit there and coast.
Before you put those down, can you talk about the difference between some of the difference between Rotary and Christian valve trumpets? Demonstrate high C key, what it's for, and things like that?
Well, Mike doesn't have a high C key, but yeah. So, I mean, they're sideways. I don't know. So, I mean, except for Alex's, his is still vertical. But, yeah, I mean, it gives you such a different variety of colors that are available. You can play this on piston. Do you guys want to try it on piston? See what it would be like? It's going to be a little funky. It's doable, but you have to work so much harder to actually get things to be a little more rounded, a little darker, a little bit warmer. Typically, anyway, that's not always the case with all rotary trumpets, but that's generally what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to not get that punchy, more tongued sound, more strident sound. We're trying to get something a little bit more, a little more relaxed, a little more, yeah. So yeah, let's see what it's like on piston. Good luck. There's also some little things on rotary. You can use fingerings are slightly different, just how they sit, and so you don't necessarily have to use fake fingerings as much, or sometimes you do, but you can achieve different colors that way a lot more easily than maybe on piston. No, great job on that. That's, I said, they handle it like pros, which they are. You know, didn't have too many issues. There's little things that just make it more difficult. And they still made it sound great, but it didn't have the same, I think, probably level of comfort on your side. And even sitting on this side next to you guys, I could tell, you're having to work a lot more to keep certain things more in pitch and, to try to make sure it's not going like that too much. Mark?
For me, I'm sure it is for you guys too, like playing piston is a very different air concept for me versus rotary. So the rotary, for me, I have to feel a lot more broad, and there's like a different point in the bell or through the instrument that I feel I'm blowing into. The trumpet obviously is a lot more direct. So I'm thinking a lot wider and a lot more, I think wide is the better term with the rotary. It's just there's a different blow. You can't articulate quite as hard, otherwise it won't really work. So going back between the two is very different. And I've always told the guys, like for me, it's harder to go from playing the rotary for a long time in a concert setting back to like piston trumpet for a second half, because it's different. But for me personally, going the other way around from rotary to trumpet feels a little bit easier.
Yeah. And as far as the actual instruments go themselves, the vent keys you were talking about, some people say they're kind of like a little cheat, and I cheat a lot then, because I love them, because what they do is they help kind of slot the note a little bit, and I'll see if I can demonstrate this. So for like, so for an A, high A, it's fine, but with the vent, it gives me like just a tiny bit more grip and a little bit more, I think sometimes even helps like launch it a little bit better. You don't always want to do that, and it's once you hit the note, you can release it. The same thing for a C. It just gives you that tiny little bit of grip on the note, which I use a lot because I don't want to feel like I'm falling off or have no launch off the note. I want to be able to just grab it. Need that for the piston trumpet. Yeah, I need one on the piston. I don't think they have those yet. Yeah. So let's actually have the student group come up. They're going to play some Strauss Eulenspiegel, Till Eulenspiegel. I know we didn't give you too much of a heads up on that, but that's how it is. When I was at Northwestern, Barbara Butler had a studio class every week, and everyone would play every week, and you would never necessarily know when you're going. You would just be pointed at, and you had to go up, and you would be cold, and you'd be trying to play, play Tomasi or play Brandenburg, and it's going to be sometimes fine, sometimes not fine at all. This will be great. So we're going to have them play some, and then we might jump in and out, and yeah.
You want to introduce yourself shortly? What? The students, you want to introduce you to the audience?
Hello, my name is Rolando Fernandez. I am a graduate student at Georgia State University. I'm getting my artist diploma, and this is my second semester.
My name is Megan George. I'm getting my master's at UCF, and this is my last semester.
My name is Victor Pires. I'm also a graduate student at Georgia State. This is my second semester.
just try to lock in with each other rhythmically, and that way I think you'll find a little bit better just coordination musically. And then the third part, you do take up to the A. Just be really confident, and be confident throughout every part here. You know, we're playing section rolls, but it's also this music is really incisive, and everybody has to be really articulate and very present.
Yeah, great. Actually, Anthony, do you want to talk about it since you're second? Maybe that's more appropriate.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, second trumpet, I forgot your name. Megan? Cool. So in the first excerpt, I noticed that you were watching, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name too. Rolando? Cool. I saw that you were watching his fingers as he was playing, and I was actually just laughing to Stuart because last year we had plexiglass in between us, and it was really hard to tell when anybody was playing. And so like I would kind of resort to like anything that would help me figure out where someone was playing. But I learned pretty quickly that watching the fingers is not the best way, only because by the time they move, you're kind of late already. So, and this is something that Mark actually told me once when I was going through a little like timing issue. He was telling me that you have to lead without like feeling you're leading as second trumpet. So you have to feel what Rolando's doing, and it's a bit of anticipation, but it's also confidence in your part that you're going to be together with him because you know your part, you can anticipate what he's going to do, but you're also pushing him just a slight bit. So and we could probably demonstrate that if you want.
So when you're playing something like this, which is in context, it's kind of like you can't quite tell where the beat is, and it's a little, it's just hard to coordinate. I'm going to give a little bit more, as you know, physically a little bit, and also just trying to presence-wise. Where I'm physically, you know, beating a little bit more, which I don't like to do a lot, but on something like this, it's absolutely necessary. So, you know, a lot of times, I'm sure you have teachers tell you, like, stop moving around because you're not a clarinet player, you don't need to be, you know, doing all that kind of stuff. On something like this, I think it's a little more necessary.
And while he's moving, I'm not moving. I'm just waiting and anticipating.
And also how you take your breath. I'm trying to demonstrate a little bit of, you know, a little energy, a little anticipation that way, so he knows where to breathe as well. Because it's not just like, we're going to try it once and I'm not going to show him how to breathe or where to breathe. So it went better than I expected to, because he's a great player and he's great at following it, even the non-oral cues. But as you can tell, it didn't work like it should have. So why don't you guys hop back in?
And the last thing for you, sorry, is that your last note is the top, so you can do more. And so you should probably just put something in the center.
Yeah, better for sure. I think second trumpet still you need to lead more. because it sounds like a very careful, like, be-da-da-da, be-da-da-da, like, use the energy he's using on his part, like if you were playing that first part, and just shift into different notes. I know that's easier said than done, but yeah. Better, yeah. That's the idea. Well, I think you can lead more, but I'll tell you because it lined up and sounded a lot better now. Now, does it feel weird to do that? It's just maybe against your. Yeah, speaking as someone who doesn't play second very much, whenever I do, I'm always afraid that I'm going to stick out or do something too wrong. But it ends up. Just try to lead. Don't try to compete with the first player, but try to lead and work with them. Good. Let's go to that next section you guys played. Mike, do you want to jump in on third? So you can help him lead it off. On something like this, Mike has a quote-unquote, solo on that. He's by himself. And he's going to try to lead and get everything set up. And if he has the right kind of energy and is leading it, then it makes it much easier for first and second to come in because we can match his energy and try to blend into it. And especially when he's leading up into like the high A, I believe. Like when he usually when you normally nail that one, it's really easy because I can just come in and join in. It's not like I'm waiting for you to see if you'll get to it. No, it's just you go for it.
There's a problem with this part. There's no fingerings written in. So you guys know. You'll notice, a lot of times when Strauss writes these third trumpet parts that are soloistic or just more independent, not necessarily soloistic, it's really important to oftentimes play a dynamic up, especially because in the low register there, that first lick, down to low G sharp. It's really important that that voice doesn't get lost, and as we play lower in the range, it's very easy to get lost. So we have to play with a certain energy and a certain dynamic. So that's one of the things that I'm thinking about there. And then, honestly, when I feel like I'm competing against the two upper voices, I'm thinking also, okay, just be confident. Even though our lines are going different directions and it's more independent, really have to think about playing very, very confidently there, especially because it's really 2 against 1.
Yeah, better. Good. Yeah, let's go to that. Let's jump over to the last one. Do you want to do the? Yeah. Whatever it is on the last page there. And one of the other jobs as first trumpet is, trying to lead this section, and some of that is trying to show musically where you're leading. Picking like, okay, I'm going to the downbeat of that measure, and try to show that to the rest of the group so they can be like, oh, great, and grab onto that rather than, three people doing maybe slightly different things. You try to be very clear about it, and if there's issues, talk about it later. I like the last note. If you're going to miss high. That's good. I like that. Mike, do we all want to jump in or just bits and pieces here?
Just a couple quick comments about this section in particular. There's so much going on in the orchestra, right? There's a lot of things. It's very busy. When we have all these eighth notes, they're all marked staccato, but we can't play the staccatos in such a way where they're not full notes. These eighth notes have to be. You have to pack a lot of sound into a very small amount of time. So I think you guys, especially when it gets lower, and everybody has some lower stuff, really fill up those notes and play them a bit louder, because otherwise they get lost in the texture of the orchestra. Everybody's going, bah, 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 I got trombones, and then the bells are like this, and it's just, they play really loud. And, they can cover us up all the time. So we have to find a way, and articulation, and the fatness of a note is a way to achieve that. So if you do this, when we do it again, really think about filling up those notes.
And you'll notice in this part, there are some of those notes that have accents on them. And it's not the most comfortable lick to do, but anytime you have those beep bop bop it's like it's supposed to be brought out of the texture, and it's usually on the register that you can't really do that as comfortably as you want. But you got to try to go for it, and then you can bring the rest of it down just a tiny bit.
Try that again, but thinking about those things, maybe move to 436 or something. 436. Yeah. Musically leading up to that climax where all of a sudden the sound just jumps out. I thought that was better.
Should we just want to try it once? Sure.
See, this part has the note names and fingerings in it. I don't know. No excuses now. Yeah, no excuses. Do you want to do this? Or do you want to do it solo?
Doesn't matter to me. You want us, what's that, 4 to 34?
Yeah.
You want to move on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great job, everyone. The three of you, that was great. And that part usually works better when my valves don't stick, but it happens sometimes. So instead of an open G, I did not get an open G. It was a different kind of G. All right. Yeah. Do you want to skip ahead or do you want me to do? I'll do Brahms. Yeah. So Anthony and I are going to switch over to the German horns and play a little Brahms 2. These are standard excerpts for both first and second trumpet. And it's one of those things that when you play it in context, sometimes it's easier because you don't have to be quite so exacting or like careful and make sure it doesn't get too soft. But at the same time, you're also going to have to pump a little bit more out, so it can be a little bit of both.
Not bad. It's pretty obvious, but I just want to point out, like, rhythmically, how important the rhythmic and harmonic locking in has to be. And you kind of take it for granted because it sounds so great, but playing in an orchestra is really nuts and bolts timing, rhythm, and great pitch, which these guys are doing an exceptional job at. So it's just don't take it for granted when you hear something like that. There's a lot of rhythmical integrity in making sure that they're releasing things together, that they're playing the same length of notes as well, and being conscious of how to balance octaves or thirds or fifths or unisons.
And on things like this where we have, it's technically not the most demanding, right? It's a lot of the same repeated notes, but especially when we have those repeated notes, and in the orchestra, like we're talking about the rhythmic integrity, feeling that beat, da-da-da-da-dee, da-da-da-dee, da-da-da-dee, da-da-da, and trying to feel that not just da-da-da-da-dee, da-da-da, because you're going to be late if you're guessing where it is. You just got to feel it and stick with it. Sometimes you're wrong, but if you stick with it, that's the only way to really get through it right. Anything you want to add? And there's different ways you can interpret things depending on who the conductor is. Sometimes they'll let you just do your own thing. Sometimes they'll be very clear about what they want. So for instance, we went da-da-da-da-dee, da-da-da-dee, da-da-da-dee. Sometimes it'll da-da-da-da-dee, da-da-da-dee. It's not as, I think, often that happens because it's feels clunky to me, but that's just personally how it sits in my brain and body. But yeah.
And if you encounter this on an audition, obviously if you're playing it yourself, it's a little bit of a different story. But if you come up to a section round and you're not sure which to do, you keep your ears open is the biggest thing that I could say as someone who's trying to fit in. Just always keep your ears open and anticipate. And with that comes a little bit of inherent risk of coming in early, of doing something maybe that's stylistically not right, but if your ears are open, then you can adjust. And if you're playing well, then a committee will let that slide and give you another chance to fit in.
A little bit different now. Trying to get this, the whole section back in. Let's see. There we go. So we're going to do a little bit of Mahler 2. And so it seems like everything we're playing is loud, which is half true, but there are different louds. There are fortissimos, there's single fortes, there's fortissimo with accents, Schaltrichter auf, so you have to actually pick up your bell and everything, and trying to show those differences without just being meatheady. I don't know the right way to do it, but instead of just trying to pound away, try to figure out where the where the balance is. Yeah, not gas all the time. Figure out where, like in one of the pieces we were doing earlier, the Copeland, the third and fourth trumpet lick, their forte on that little solo line is a different sort of forte than I was playing on my lick. So you have to figure out where you fit within the orchestra and the section. And let me... I always think my chops are going to last longer than they do, and then I get to that last C on that ba 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 ha ba, and it sometimes doesn't work. So as you could hear, beam, bum, 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 beam, I was playing maybe mezzo, piano mezzo forte, something like that, and letting Anthony take the lead because it wasn't going to work otherwise. It's a lot of times it's a marathon. You try to get your chops to last as long as possible. Don't just get excited because you see forte and you have the melody, and you go for it, and then you're done for the rest of the symphony.
There's no heroes if you. There's no heroes. Yeah. There's no heroes if you just play every note on the page. If then you make a mistake. So.
You'll encounter a lot, and it's a lot of times in section rounds especially if you're auditioning for second or third even, because we want to see if you can fit in, not just on the loud things, and that doesn't feel great, especially after playing all the loud things, but auditions never feel great. So this is one where you're just trying to make as much of a blend as possible. You have to really know, what part of the note part of the chord you're on. Like my first note, I have to play low, and when you're practicing it by yourself, if you play an F triggered, it's going to feel funky, but you have to get used to that.
Yeah, so like Stu was saying, as second trumpet, this is an excerpt that I've come into contact with fairly frequently, especially preparing for this audition. So it's in D flat major, and you start on D flat, so you need to be a little more supportive and give the tonic while still being in piano. And you need to, although you don't have the melody, you need to shape with the melody. And then when you get those four notes, you just make them the most sumptuous, luscious thing that you've ever heard. But if you're familiar with this piece, those four notes have little marcato carets on top, and then the last one doesn't. So you'll hear a difference between those four, and then going into the last resolution of D flat major is more of a calm sort of slurred note into that. So it's just these little details that really make or break your musical interpretation and what you show to committees or just a performance in general. So details matter.
Can you guys hear me now? Yeah. So since this is a relatively new section, what kind of conversations did you guys have when you approached beyond like your individual study? Because you guys have talked a lot about like your training and the things that you guys already knew coming into this, and then like the quick, hey, I need you to take the lead on this, those kinds of conversations. But what did you guys do initially when you first started playing together?
Well, we all came in at different times. This is a very staggered section, which has just recently been a full thing.
Yeah, it's a great question, but as we make hires and we listen to people oftentimes in the orchestra or in a section round and part of an audition, and we choose them, there's an inherent amount of trust that the individual knows what they need to do. And you can hear each of these guys, everyone has sort of taken their roles and embraced it, really knows how to approach it. So it's not so much a matter of having conversations about, okay, you take the lead here. A lot of it is really instinctual in a way, and just trying to present a product that works. So I think that would, I think trust is the biggest factor there, not so much about conversation.
Trust, I mean, obviously we play duets, trios, quartets and things, switch off parts, and a lot of, like we said, first and second generally play more together, and then third and fourth generally play more together, and so we spend more time trying to learn the intricacies and idiosyncrasies of each other. But yeah, a lot of it's just, we get together, we play, we learn each other's vocabulary, because that always takes a little bit, or vocabulary and syntax and all that, just try to figure out what I mean by certain things, and if he has questions, if Anthony ever has questions about something or the rest of the section, they'll ask. It's not like they're not allowed to speak to me and I rule an iron fist and whatever I say goes. But we try to just be, I think, as inclusive as we can, and so if there's questions, concerns, whatever, we jump into it and do it.
I would say, because I joined fairly recently, 4 years ago now, I try to listen as much to tendencies as I could. And that includes, where's the pitch level, listening to across the orchestra, just where are people playing at? Where's the sense of pitch? Noticing how loudly they're playing. What's the dynamic threshold? Is there forte maybe more on the mezzo forte side, or is there forte more on the fortissimo side? And where am I going to fit into that? How short are their articulations? How long do they release notes? Do they release right on the bar line? Do they hang over a little bit? So all these small details I'm trying to pick up without having to ask, because it's kind of be a little annoying if I was like, hey Mike, what are you doing on this note, this note, this note? And
that's where the trust comes in.
So it's getting to work with somebody new. You're just trying to pick up their tendencies. Where's their pitch? Where's their time? Do they like things on the softer end? Do they like things on the louder end? When do they push? When do they pull back? Do they like unisons equal? Do they like unisons all underneath? So those are the kinds of things that I think all of us kind of picked up when we started.
Any other questions real quick? Yeah, go for it.
So what exactly is the purpose of utility trumpet? Why is it called that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. No.
No, I'm just kidding. So I have a kind of a cool role within the orchestra. So I play a variety of roles as needed. Right now I'm playing fourth when there's a four-part to a piece, like a Mahler Symphony or a Copeland. I've been playing a lot of third. I'm usually at the end of the section, but I fill in for wherever it's needed. So if there's 3 parts on a Strauss tone poem, this year I played a lot of third on Don Juan until, I'll also play second with Mike, primarily on the first half of a program, like the overture and a concerto. So I'm kind of the designated hitter. Wherever they need to put me, I plug in and play. So I gotta be able to switch roles and do Anthony's job, and then do a little bit of Mike's job, which is section, but also a little bit of solo independent lines that come in and out. And then in the fourth end, there's just fitting in and playing as best as I can in the low register. So it's kind of I gotta be prepared for anything.
Yeah, and so why is the associate principal third? Why wouldn't it be second?
So this is more of a tradition thing, I believe. And actually, technically, my title is associate principal / utility. But oftentimes, and I think it's most common in American orchestras, your principal sits first chair. Boom. You've got your second, sits second chair, and the idea is that that's kind of a fixture. And then in the larger works, the third trumpet is often a high voice. like if you think of the horn section, where the third horn is also a high part, the third trumpet, even though it plays low and high, that's why it often falls to the associate. And obviously when Stuart is not playing principal, I'm required then to play the first part. There are a handful of orchestras, however, that the associate does play fourth. I'm thinking San Francisco and Los Angeles. I believe their associate is, whenever there's 4 trumpets, their associate plays fourth. And that's just what they've done historically in those orchestras. I don't know the reason for that, because it's a little bit out of the norm, but in most American orchestras, it's typically this way. Well, I think, we were going to sort of dovetail real quick. I know Mark mentioned that we're kind of a team. And on the first half of programs, we often will play maybe the overture of the concerto is often just 2 trumpets. And so we kind of operate as a unit. And then the second half, maybe it's a Tchaikovsky symphony and Stuart and Anthony will play it. Or maybe there's a Sibelius symphony like next week, and the 3 of those guys will play it. So Mark and I are going to do a little bit of it's Dvorak New World Symphony, just a little bit of it, just to kind of demonstrate like our little unit, and then maybe talk about a couple ideas what we're thinking about in this passage. It's a short thing.
Quick about this. Kind of what I'm thinking through this entire thing is just, I'm playing the notes that I see on the page, but I'm completely invested into what Mike is doing. I know the notes, I know the fingerings, I know the rhythm. I'm just completely cluing into how he paces his crescendos and how he paces his decrescendos, where he's breathing, how he's releasing notes. I'm just trying to match exactly mirroring what he's doing, and then harmonically, I'm really thinking about what note in the chord do I have. So I spend a lot of time working with drones. Just a quick theory lesson: when you have the root, you want to just plant it right down the middle. When you're playing a third, obviously it's got to be lower, and a fifth, it's got to be a little bit higher. In a minor key, obviously the minor third's going to be a little bit higher, and the same rules apply with the tonic and the fifth. But this whole thing is so harmonic that I'm just listening to his pitch, and I'm trying to just taper as much as I can. One of my teachers in college is second trumpet with the Cleveland Orchestra, so I had great training about playing section playing. And we talk a lot, and he always told me, when in doubt, get out of the way. Don't insist. If something's out of tune, I'm not going to try to play a little bit louder and force Mike to find my pitch. I'm going to try to, maybe if I'm uncertain about something, I'm going to back off a little bit and see if I can find it. Same thing with releases. If I'm hanging over, that's not really great. So I'm, if anything, always just being conscious that I'm staying out of the way, and if anything, getting out a little bit early.
And real quick, what I appreciate, all he just told you, but also executed, is that allows me not to think about what's going on over here. It allows me, as in that first chair role, to think about what's going on in the orchestra and how I need my voice and our voices together to be. If he's not doing those things, it becomes very distracting, and then my focus is then on, that's out of tune, or that's not with me, and all of a sudden, musically, things can kind of go south in a hurry. So that's just one of the things that, that Mark just executed with that little excerpt. It was great because I didn't have to think, I just knew this just was right. And I could then think about musically, okay, what am I doing, where am I going, and how is this fitting in? we're running real close on time, so I think we're just going to do one more thing with the four of us.
Yeah, we're going to finish it off on a bang. And this is a little bit of Symphony Fantastique. Yeah, thank you all for having us. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, and one more applause for the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra trumpet section. Stuart Stephenson, Tony Limoncelli, Mike Tiscione, and Mark Maliniak. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much.